All right, so we're recording right now. Salvador Castaneda and Mike Johnson.
Yeah, so it's funny that you run into people in your life like we have right now. I feel like without having talked in, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, maybe.
Yeah.
We we have somehow ended up in a similar place in our thinking about the things that we want to accomplish and how we're going about it.
Right.
About you today, Sal.
Yep. Exactly. I'm just
So
turning.
your adventure has definitely been a bit more, uh, well, adventurous, for lack of a better word, than mine has. Mine is I continue to kind of sit in the basement and work my full time job while trying to maximize the time that I'm spending. But you've gone about it a slightly different way, even though we're in a similar spot now.
Right. Yeah, one of the big things for me when I was working was trying to find time to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the jobs that you have right now and I used to have. I mean, but the demand it's a pretty big demand in regards to how much time you have to put in it as far as hours go because of the customer load.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, at some point, I decided that it was going to be very important for me to start taking myself in another direction and start trying to force myself at that time to pay attention to the things that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Even being away from working with databases, I've come to feel that I really do enjoy working with databases, and I enjoy the part of trying to figure things out and kind of all the troubleshooting. So I kind of come back around a little bit to kind of feel like databases is kind of a passion. It is part of the passion for me. But at the same time, it was very difficult because putting 8-10 hours a day. I have 5 kids basically.
Yeah.
So 4 or 5. Yeah, I have 4 boys, 1 daughter. And then so when do you find time, right?
Right.
So that's kind of where this conversation started with us yesterday. Where do you find time? How do you find time? How do you manage your time in order to be able to get everything done that you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do you do, Mike, in regards to trying to force yourself to make that time?
Sure. So first thing I do is make priorities, right?
Right.
And without the priorities, then nothing else is going to work. So I personally, and if I'm being honest, probably prioritize work a little bit more over how much time I spend with my family. I'm a bit of a workaholic. And when I say work, I mean my full-time job that pays the bills on the regular.
Right.
That's very important to me. I have a 8-month-old daughter, and making sure that my family is taken care of and that we have things that we need is important to me. So I often struggle to balance the work and the life. And what I've been doing lately is not signing on early and trying to sign off as close to 5 o'clock as I can, while still staying connected. You never actually escape, but
Right.
and making sure that during those other times I'm really focusing on my family. Where I get the most done is when family goes to bed. So I tend to burn the midnight oil a good bit, just trying to coordinate the other things that I want to get done. Now, I don't look at the time I spend at night as the end all be all of how to get more out of my day. But I do spend a lot of that time trying to make the hours of my day more important. And what I mean by that is that in those 4 or 5 hours that I spend in the evenings, I really focus on things that will be making money while I'm also making money. So
Right.
I am no longer the product. I'm creating products that are also doing work beside me, and continuing to grow, my overall efforts.
Right. And I think
that's important.
well, I think that's very important because creating avenues for income to come in, especially if it's something that's a passion for you, I think is important if you can work them in a certain way that eventually you're not needed anymore. And you know,
And that's the dream, man. That is
and
the dream.
not saying that you aren't going to be needed, but basically you're kind of setting up the systems and the guidelines and the processes in order for this thing to keep working while you're sleeping, while you're working at your other job, and maybe even working on some other projects. What I used to do is exactly what you're talking about. I would wake up early in the morning, try to get some exercise in. If I wasn't, I kind of went through a time where I kind of felt burnt out a little bit. But in general, I would wake up early, try to get a little bit of a workout in, do my everyday job, take care of the kids after they go to school. And at once, I think normally around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night is when everybody would go to bed. And then I would stay up from 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I would stay up till 12 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, listening to podcasts, reading books, basically educating myself on anything and everything that I could educate myself for me to try to get to a point where I felt confident on the steps that I needed to take in order to be able to follow my passions. I remember one time, and kind of like on a side note, talking about time management, one thing that I noticed that I had to start changing a lot was how much time I'm actually spending doing particular things. And those things being, at one point I decided I don't want to mow the lawn anymore. I had a pretty big lawn and adamant about wanting to mow it on foot. And I had 3/4 of an acre. It would take me 3 hours to mow the lawn. At some point I just decided, you know what? I'm just wasting time when I could be doing other things that are more important. I could be spending time with my kids. I could be reading a book. I could be working towards something. And thinking back, I was trying to get into an investment property while I was taking care of my 2 younger kids during lunch, while I was working for Infor, for the company that I was working for. And I remember being in the parking lots of this property that we were trying to look to see if we could invest in, with my 2 children in the car crying, inspections going on. And even though it was my lunch hour, things were breaking at work. And then I was needed to start, and I needed to start getting into conference calls. And that for me was so stressful. I kind of, the point being is, I kind of wish that I probably should have sent the kids to daycare. And I probably should have made the appointment at a time that was outside of work. And maybe kind of done a little bit more to kind of, manage my time a little bit better. But my life was basically like that for a long time. Work, kids, my wife had her own business as well. She was working 40, 50 hours a week. I was working 40, 50 hours a week. And it just got to be too much.
Yeah.
You
brought up a couple of good points right there. One of them is being efficient with the time that you do have personally.
Right.
And I, we all want to save a buck or two and maybe not send the kids off to daycare at lunch, right. But maybe that's not the best use of time. And it's not, for me, firstly, usually right. It's how much more money is this going to cost me, but that's not always the right answer. Saving time is sometimes worth it to spend that money in order to get that time back to be able to focus on what it is. And your other point there is that even though you were maybe present with the family or present on this rental property that you were trying to get into, you weren't present in that fully.
Right.
So your time was divided. You probably weren't doing the best job that you could of getting the house inspected, making the deal you needed to make, handling your full-time job, and taking care of the kids because you weren't allowed to focus on one thing. Correct. As much as people say I'm a great multitasker, they're full of crap. No one's a great multitasker. We might be able to in a 10-minute period, pay attention to 5 things, and we won't do a particularly good job of that, but it's much better to pay attention to one thing for a set period of time than it is to try to divide that up, because the task switching that our brains have to go through, the context switching is really hard for us as humans, and we tend not to do as good a job as we can when our time is divided. So
Right.
you're on point with that. Making sure that you're spending your time better, even if that means you got to spend a little more money to put the kids in daycare, or a different time of day that would better suit you being able to focus on that.
Right, right, and it is. You know, one thing. So from reading all of these books, there are some people that are very successful that'll even go out of their way to wear the same clothes every day, and they schedule their day out. I think it's a little bit crazy, but I'm starting to do this as well. Some people schedule their day out every ten minutes, every 15 minutes, and they will schedule their day out so that they do specific tasks or specific things at specific times so that they can just concentrate on that one thing at that one time. And they don't want to waste any time dealing with anything that's not actually making them money.
Correct.
One thing that I started doing, which, so, kind of going back a little bit as far as spending time with family, one thing that I started to notice is that I was not accomplishing very much, but I felt that I was very busy. But it was really because I was just kind of keeping myself busy with things that didn't matter. I wasn't really paying attention to my kids 24/7. I was paying attention to the job because I had to, but outside of that, I just, I wasn't really paying attention to the things the way I needed to pay attention to them. And then one of the things that I started doing is I started tracking my time. I don't know if you've done that. I've just, I've been doing this for a bit. I'm tracking my time to see how I'm actually spending my day, but I'm combining it with keeping all of the goals that I want to accomplish in mind. So what ended up happening in the transition for me is that I would find myself procrastinating because, a lot of people, sometimes even if you get the right information for what you need to do, you procrastinate to do it. But if you start to document how you actually spend your time, you actually start to tell yourself, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just wasting time. So then instead of, it ended up, for me, it ended up helping me because it ended up making my mind switch from procrastinating and letting things kind of go and go and go to the point where I don't want to let things go anymore because I'm keeping myself in check. And and actually it's kind of been pretty good. I mean, even like us talking right now.
Yeah. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at tracking what I do during the day. I actually don't know why. I started for a while having a notebook next to me and just marking off things that I needed to do, and then also things that I accomplished. We're both in technology, and we know that there's no tangible thing at the end of a long workday for us. So,
Right.
so part of the reason that I started doing it a while ago, and I don't actually know why I fell off. Maybe it was just I ran out of piece of paper or something, was too lazy to go get another one. But it was helping me sort of understand all of the things that I'd actually done that day. Because, being in IT, you might have done hours and hours worth of work, but there's nothing you can hold
Right.
and say, walk over to someone and say, look what I did here. But that's sometimes I do like mowing my yard. Calling back to what you said earlier, because it's tangible. I can see where I've mowed and where I haven't mowed. I can see in my mind where the grass was way too tall before, and now the yard looks at least a bit more acceptable, right?
So you have that sense of accomplishment because you see what you're
Yep,
doing,
yep.
where you're going. Yeah. Yeah.
So I did that for a little while, and I fell off. I should probably, based on this conversation, I'm definitely going to start doing that again, because I did feel better at the end of my day, regardless of whether I was working for things for my company or myself. or just doing personal tasks that need to get taken care of. Seeing that list with check marks or lines drawn through it was very satisfying, and really kind of boosted me into the next day.
Yeah.
Knowing that I wanted to try to recreate that feeling of success and accomplishment.
Yeah, one of the things that's helped me too, that I've changed a lot for myself, and it actually saved me a little bit in regards to anxiety. I'm a doer. I almost would classify myself. I'm the type of person that I'm like a dog. If you throw, I'm ready for you to throw that problem into the air so I can go after it. Yep. But at the same time, I used to think I used to think in the short term, not in the long term. And so sometimes there's a lot of things that I wanted to accomplish, but I would never accomplish them because I had two issues. One, I wasn't spending the time that I needed to be spending to do them. And two, the goal was, it was short-sighted, that if I didn't see something happen in a week or two, I would just kind of lose interest in it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've started doing now is everything that I am forcing myself to pay attention to, because they're passions that I want to do. It's and I say forced because you have to force yourself in order for you to change the habits that you have. And what I'm doing, so I'm doing two things right now. One, anything that I get into, even with us putting out content right now, I'm doing it for the long term. I am not expecting for anything to happen anytime in the short term. If it does, it does. But I'm doing it. I have a 2 to 5 year commitment where I'm just going to do this every day, and I'm going to keep moving forward, and that is my goal. The short term part of it is that I make sure that every day I do at least a little bit to get closer to where I want to be 2 or 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. But even then, I'm still trying to force myself to where I try not to watch TV anymore, and I really try to, when I am spending time with my kids, try to spend more quality time with them in the sense of I'm actually in the present with them, doing things with them, instead of, my kids are on their iPad and the TV's on and the baby's got his own phone, I'm on my phone, and mom's in the other room on her phone. I mean, we're not doing anything together or anything productive. And so I've been trying to change that a lot.
No, it's so easy to be distracted these days. We have so many distractions right at our fingertips. I try not to watch a lot of TV, but man, I love YouTube. YouTube just has an endless amount of interesting content to me, whether it's about technology. I watch a lot of woodworking videos, even though I don't do woodworking. It's just very interesting to me. Education, news, comedy. It's just really easy to fall down that. And I have to, I even find myself sitting there with the family, and I'll just pull out the phone and see, a creator that I like on YouTube just posted a video. Let me watch this. That I'm not present then. I'm not where I should be. And I really been focusing on not doing that, because I think it's insidious the way that it affects you, because it's not an immediate result. A negative effect, but over time, I think it weakens the bonds of those relationships that you should be forming when you're sitting there with your family, because that phone's always out of your corner of your eye calling for your attention. The next notification, the next pop-up is always there, and eventually it really causes problems. So I try to be conscious of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to be very conscious of everything that I'm doing in my life right now. Because, and a big reason for it is because about 6 years ago, I just decided, whether you believe in reincarnation, whether you believe that, there's a paradise or not, to get a little bit religious, but not, whatever you believe religious wise, at the end of the day, I feel more that you really need to take advantage of the time and the life that you have right now. And I know for myself, I have wasted so much time not doing anything or not even working towards the goals that I really want.
Correct.
So at one point, I gave myself permission to follow those goals. 6 years ago, I told my wife, every stupid idea I have, I'm just gonna do it. I don't believe I have stupid ideas, but
Yeah.
but a lot of people will tell you, "Oh, you can't do that. It's not possible." I mean, just so many reasons why you shouldn't do it. And most of the time, people do that because that's who they are around
Yep.
all of the time. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, so at some point, I gave myself permission to want to follow my dreams, and it's not easy, and it's fun, and it's hard, and it's great. But I'm really happy about doing that.
And you can end up down a lot of dead end paths, but that's not a failure. That's just another way that you found out that you're not really interested in or doesn't work.
Right.
A lot of people look at that as, oh, I tried this and I failed, and so now I'm afraid to try something else. No, that's all a learning process, and you can go ahead and throw that away and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, we didn't really discuss what we were going to talk about before this call. A lot of folks
Right.
would have had an outline, kind of synced up on a lot of points, but you're nailing some stuff. I actually have a notepad up here, and one of the things I put on here is action is key.
Yes.
And you were dead on that 6 years ago, man. I wish I'd been on that 6 years ago. I think I may have started my journey, to trying to figure out how I could, multiply my time and be more and get the most out of my time. Maybe around then, maybe a little bit earlier than that, but. One of the things that I fooled myself into thinking that I was accomplishing stuff, and I'm not saying it's bad, but is reading, blog posts and books and listening to audiobooks and podcasts of people who have been there and done that and who are educating me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great, and it's imperative that you're always gaining knowledge and you're improving yourself and you're gathering the tools that you're going to need to be successful, right? So other people have been there, and it would be foolish not to go and use what they've already learned and implement that in your own life. However, that is maybe only half of it. The other half is what do you do with that knowledge? Is the action part of that, right? It's
Right.
executing on the knowledge that you have. It's sharing that knowledge with others. It's generally improving the life of those in your immediate influence because of what you've learned. So I probably for 2 years I was like, man, I read all these books and listened to all these great podcasts, and it was all intake and there was no output. And at the end of that, I kind of burned out on reading and listening to stuff because I just became overloaded with all of these things, and there was no result from it because I wasn't acting on anything I was hearing. So I was much better off internally, but who knew that? I didn't even know that because there was no outward show, there was no outward display of me acting upon and taking advantage of all that I learned to create a product or to impart that wisdom on someone else or anything. And so, what you're doing right now, you are so spot on with it because you're putting that content, you're putting all of that information and knowledge that you've gained out there into the world, trying to make a difference, trying to make it better, even if it's just for you and your family, right?
Right. And a big point that you're hitting on, I actually ran into the same problem. I felt that I was just taking in so much information and I still didn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
it felt good for a long time, right?
Well, it
You
did
were
feel
excited about it.
It felt good. I was excited about it. But then I went through a long time where I just was not executing on anything. And, there's several things that happened to me, Mike, in regards to me not executing them. One, even though I was reading a lot of things and listening to a lot of podcasts and listening to people on what to do, I don't think I was being specific enough for me to actually start acting. So what I started doing is I started to look at where the cracks were, and I forced myself to read and educate and listen to a lot of stuff. I mean, one of the things that I was afraid of is sales. I don't know. I don't think I've never thought personally of myself to be a good salesman.
No.
And I didn't think I knew how to do it. So then what happened is I immersed myself in all of these sales books, and as I was reading them, I didn't understand, I didn't comprehend, I felt that there was something missing. But I forced myself to keep on reading them and keep on reading them. And you know what ended up happening? At one point, I was like, I know what I need to do. And 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 what it was is I don't think I was exercising, reading, and learning enough, even though I felt I was, in that particular subject for me to feel comfortable. Kind of like going to the gym. You know, you go to the gym and you lift weights, and you know you kind of feel like you don't know what you're doing, even though you did the research, but you don't really figure out what you're doing until you actually start doing it. And one of the ways that I did it is I started actually doing things before I was able to do them, and I kept reading about them, and then I just thought, you know what, I can do this stuff. I feel good about it. So that's what happened with me. I just kept on reading. I kept immersing and trying to position myself with people that were doing the things where I wanted to go in order for me to download the information that they were putting out. The other thing that I thought was a problem for me was that I was scared. I was scared. Like, you know, even us doing this podcast, you know, scared. What are people going to think? You know, scared of the unknown, basically. And, but I made up my mind. I have to do it. I gave you a call. You said, hey, let's do it. And, but, you know, but going back to the point that you're saying, the other thing that I had an issue with were people telling me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. There's a lot of people that try to sabotage your success because they're not happy with their success, and then you end up listening to it and you end up doing nothing. And I am at fault for doing that for a very long time. And at some point, I also decided, you know what, I don't really care what anybody else thinks in regards to me trying to be successful with myself. I want to just put the effort in and keep on moving forward and not let somebody take me off my path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. So you touched on another thing unintentionally, but we're sharing a brain here. I wrote down 3 rules that I try to keep it simple for myself because you know I don't want it to be complicated. I don't want to have this complicated ethos about how I conduct myself and all this other stuff because it's you know it tends to creep in and make you. I don't know. I feel like people who develop this massive sense of you know of totally of who they are and how they operate. It gets very cumbersome to carry that around. So I tried to simplify mine. Okay. It's 3 4-letter acronyms. The second one I've cleaned up to be family friendly. The first one is MYOB. Mind your own business, man. I don't know. I spend a lot less time on Facebook and on social media and watching the news because you know what? Honestly, most of it's not my business, and I might get caught up spending a ton of brain cycles and maybe even action on things that I probably don't have influence over, shouldn't have influence over, and are really none of my business. And that's taking away from the time that I can spend working on things that are much closer to home.
Yeah, definitely.
Either personally or for my family. The second one is, and it's funny that we're doing a podcast about this, but in general in life, this is a good rule. Listen more, talk less. LMTL. Like I said, I changed it from another one. It's slightly less family friendly, but it's, you know, just shut up a little bit more and just listen. Yeah. You'd be surprised what the things that you can pick up on and perceive when you're listening a little bit more, and you listen more first. Yeah. You'll always have a much better outcome when you listen more. And actually, there's been a bunch of studies done that say that people that talk less in interviews and in board meetings and, you know, in important situations actually seem smarter. So sometimes we talk ourselves out of seeming smart. I'm sure I've done that.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Thousands of times. Just never knew when to shut up.
Yeah.
And the last one is GBTW. Get back to work. Yes. You know, that idle time that you sit there and spend thinking about your next move, lets that fear come in. Lets that self-doubt come in. Lets the regret of all the things that you haven't done come in. You know, all those things you meant to do. Yeah. Back in the day, you can sit there and dwell on that, and it's not moving you forward. But if you're working, if you're pushing towards something, you don't have time to sit there and linger on those things. You're driving for something else, and the fear has trouble keeping up with you, and the self-doubt has trouble keeping up with you because you're just forging ahead, and putting it out there. So
I agree with that.
Those are my three things.
Yeah, and it's what's happening with me. I just doing, and then I'm just not spending time on drama. I'm not spending time on things that aren't positive for me. And I'm actually, I like Gary Vaynerchuk where he says, to get rid of the one loser friend. I actually don't, there's a lot of people that I've met in my life, and most people that I am friends with. I try to keep in touch with them, or I like being friends with them for specific reasons. Because even before I wanted to become what I want to become, before I even knew it, I knew that I wanted to position myself with people that I admired in some way. Some quality about them. Maybe they're not perfect, but just some quality about them is something that I would like to aspire to be like. But now I've taken it to a whole new level where I don't even really hang out with anybody. I mean, my best friends right now are all these books that I have next to me because that's where I'm trying to put my energy into to absorb everything I can. And that's so I really don't hang out with too many people anymore. I kind of changed.
So you got rid of all your loser friends.
And to quote Grant Cardone a little bit, even some family or most of my family, because sometimes, like Grant Cardone, sometimes it's your mom or your dad or your siblings that are the ones that are trying to do the most damage to you, especially because you kind of hold them close. And I'm pretty much doing everything on my own right now. I just, take care of my family, take care of as far as my kids go and my wife and the things that we want to go out and do and hanging out and meeting new people. I mean, even with you, we never really spoke too much when we used to work together. Nope. But just from the small conversations that we had, I always thought, what, I think this guy is somebody that I would like to listen to, and he's doing something with himself, and it sounds like he's trying to take himself somewhere. And so we didn't, and we didn't talk for forever. And then on the whole doing part, I just called you yesterday. I mean, we weren't planning on doing any of this. I just called you yesterday and said, hey, do you want to do it? And you said, yeah, let's do it tomorrow.
You pinged me on Facebook yesterday, and here we are today.
Right. And I love it. Because I had been wanting to do a cast, and I was asking a lot of people, do you want to do this with me? Do you want? And they're like, oh yeah, I want to do it. But nobody ever wanted to do it. Mike over here, we got it done. You got it done. But it was also a dream of yours, I remember. You wanted to start doing some of these podcast things, so it wasn't just.
And I'm actively working it. But before we talked today, I spent the last 4 hours working on my podcasting business.
Right.
And it's not a podcast. It is a podcast hosting platform. Because I think that the current state of podcast hosting is broken.
Oh, I agree. It's been difficult for what I've been doing. It's been a little bit difficult from how you explained that your platform is going to work. It seems like it would make things a lot more seamless and a lot easier in order to distribute content. So
Sal, I understand. I think we've had a good chat today, but I do understand that you're working on stuff, and I want to make sure that people are looking out for what you've been working on. You wrote an ebook, and that's something that's always intimidated me. So let me just ask you, how long did it take you to write the ebook? Because I've thought about an ebook that I could write. Actually, I probably have 4 or 5 ideas, but man, putting pen to paper, keystrokes into a Word document, I've never even attempted to. So how'd you get to that?
Okay, so the ebook is really a dream that I had a long time ago. I've always thought about writing a book. And as I read all of the books that I've been reading in relation to what I want to aspire to be, I've always taken notes. I don't ever read a book and not take notes. I take notes. And all of those notes, at some point, I wanted to condense them down or put them into a book. I did a lot of research, And I just thought, you know what, right now is not the time for me to try to get published and have somebody change the meaning of my book. And I didn't want to put it on Amazon or Kindle because they have specific guidelines that you have to stick to. So what I decided to do is, okay, fine, I'm just going to write an ebook for myself. The ebook did not take me that long to write. It really only took me one day to write it, to type it out.
Really?
Yeah, it took me one day to type it out. But
so it was all there in your head, and you just did a brain dump into, a Word doc.
Right. So what happened with the ebook is that when my wife and I had her chiropractic business, and then we had whatever we were going through at the time, at some point a light clicked in my head. I didn't have, and I don't have family members that are great entrepreneurs to have downloaded some of the information that they have in order for me to make, so there's a lot of things that I learned on my own, and one of them was, where's my money going? And so I started documenting where our money was going. How much do we pay for daycare? How much is going to taxes? How much is going to interest? Where is the interest going? Even 401k plans, like your retirement. Most people just put the money in a 401k plan and they think that the person that's managing it is doing right by them. But statistically speaking, 96% of people that manage your money never beat the market. So you have 96% of people have their money with people that don't know what they're doing either. And the other 4%, you can't afford, if you're just a regular person, you can't afford to get their services. Yeah. So that is something, so for the last 5 years, the things that I put into my ebook are steps that I've done every 3 to 6 months in order to see where our money's going, consolidate it, try to keep more, and try to redirect it into things that are more important for us. So that is where the ebook thing, and I actually did it. So for the last 5 years, I've been doing it at least every 6 months. And
nice.
So
how would someone get your ebook?
So if somebody goes to mycoachsal.com/moneybook-sales.
Okay.
And then my book is there basically. And I think it's a great book. I was thinking about giving it away for free. I was thinking about putting a price to it, and I just decided $4.99. I think it's more than worth the book. It's the cost of a coffee cup. Sure. And on average, I've done this for my family in regards to our business, and I've done it personal, and I've done it with friends. On average, I have found ways to save 30% of what I'm actually putting out every month. But huge. So and that involves kind of taking a look at exactly where your money's going, and it also gives you an option to see what options you have of how you can make life better for yourself. I just met with a friend of mine yesterday and talked a lot about some things about the book, and he didn't even know he could do some of the things that were in there. So anyways, I think it's a great book. So to go back to your question, I came up with the content over, several years, and writing it all out took me one day.
That's so awesome.
The editing and making sure that it was right took me about 3 or 4 days, just because it was the first time that I'd ever written a book. And setting up the website in order for people to go to this website and be able to sign up and have a membership, and it be tied to my PayPal and it be tied to MailChimp, and allow you to download the book in a secure area. That, my friend, took me like 4 months, because I started working on it and I had so many problems trying to get it done. I just quit.
Wish you called me before.
I quit because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I came back to it and I thought, okay, let me bang my head a couple of times and let's get this done. Yeah. And luckily I was able to get through the issue. So the site, it's all created by me. I did it all by myself.
Very cool.
But really, it was. I wrote the book in October. I started the website in about October, November of last year, I wrote the book. In October, November, I started trying to get the website done, and I ran into a lot of problems. But, at the end of the day, if I would have just kind of pressed on and not given up, I think I could have had it done before.
But website aside, websites are complicated, hot mess depending on what you're trying to do on them. But from deciding to take action with all that knowledge you gain to final product, about a week. That's pretty good.
Right. If we were gonna say, okay, let's just condense all the hours into however long it took me about a week to write that ebook. I have another ebook that I want to write, but I'm not there yet.
Well, I bet you the second one's going to be a lot easier than the first too.
Right, and I'm writing them all in order for them to kind of complement each other. One of them was basically reducing expenses. Most people spend all their money, so if I wrote a book that helped them reduce expenses, it would kind of help to loosen the belt a little bit in order for them to try to focus on other things, which my next ebook is going to be on multiple sources of income and how to get yourself there. Basically like a coaching book to help you stay on track to get you to where you want to be.
That's awesome.
That's the next one.
Awesome. Well, so people can find you at MikeCoachSal.com. That's how they can reach out to you. I'm sure your email address, contact page, something's on there, right?
Mike.
Maybe by the time this is
so MoneyBook so it's the MikeCoachSal.com/MoneyBookSales. That's where you can get the ebook. As far as the homepage, I'm still working on that. So that's kind of the thing of I just jumped off the cliff and I'm getting stuff done. It's all a work in progress. And
build the parachute on the way down, right?
Exactly. So it'll be done today now because
I put you
you put me on the spot. So what about you? What is we were talking yesterday. Do you want to tell everybody how you're going to be known from here on out? Is that something you want to put out yet?
Maybe not that yet, but I will say that if you're listening to this as a podcast, it's being hosted on my podcasting platform, currently called Pod Engine, PodNGN.com. Soon to be rebranded to something a little more friendly. I figured out people didn't know how to pronounce the NGN part of it, but rebrand coming. But you're probably listening to this on my podcasting platform. Awesome. You can reach me at mj@podngn.com.
Okay.
If you're trying to find me, but I'm all over the web. You can find me on. I think my social media links are actually there for my personal stuff. So if you go check it out, give me a shout if you want to talk. I love talking to other people interested in improving themselves and entrepreneurs and just folks who are doers, who are acting on all the things that they have learned and are actively attempting to make their lives better.
Right.
That excites me the most.
So I will connect with you so I can get your contact information. And then I'll give you my contact information. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn right now under Salvador Castaneda. And if anybody wants to email me, it's salvador@mycoachsal.com. But when we post all of this out there, we will add all of our contact information.
Indeed, we will.
Yep. And just to kind of finish it off a little bit, we're basically, I think both of us are just really trying to share information in hopes that it helps other people and gets other people motivated. That is the main. I know we talked about my website and my book. We talked about Mike's platform. But overall, and we both talked about this before we got on here, our main goal for starting to put out these casts is we just want to provide information and that helps people.
I agree with you 100%. Our entire civilization is based on the sharing of knowledge and information, and we just want to jump into that pool and start doing our part.
Right. And then kind of like iron sharpens iron, so we're helping each other, push each other along. And
exactly.
So anyway, so it's great, Mike. I appreciate you having a conversation with me on a Sunday on short notice, and appreciate talking to you. And I think we need to do this once a week.
At least. In order to keep us honest,
All right.
You let it linger for 2 weeks, and you might forget about it, find something else to do, So we gotta keep on it, man.
Okay. All right. So you heard it. Mike said it. We're gonna be doing it at least once a week, but that is a minimum.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Well, thanks for sticking with us, everybody. I appreciate you guys listening. Please reach out to us. We'd love to hear some feedback from you.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
We will talk to you in the next episode of whatever this is called, currently untitled.
Yes. And, you know, I don't know if we can do this or not, but if you find the content something that kind of touches your heart and you feel like you need to share it and let other people know about it, please do that.
Please.
I'm going to turn this off, Mike, before I hang up.